All right, thank you guys for coming. We've got ORU President Dr. William Wilson, and then we've also got Athletic Director Mike Carter. We'll open it up for Mr. Carter to give us an opening statement, and President Wilson will follow with the statement, and we'll open it up for questions.
Just want to welcome you here today. Thank you for your interest in ORU, and we're here to address a few issues that are out there. So at this time, I'd just like to turn it over to our President, Dr. William Wilson.
Good. Thank you, Mike, and welcome today to campus. I'm going to share a statement today that was shared with our ORU community in chapel just a little while ago, earlier this morning. It's a bit lengthy, so if you'll stay with me, please. Following discussions over the last year and most intensely over the last month, Scott Sutton, our men's basketball coach, was released this past Monday. Before any decisions were made regarding the disposition of Scott's tenure at ORU, multiple constituencies were consulted, including athletic administration, members of the President's Cabinet, faculty, alumni, students, and most importantly, the leadership of the ORU Board of Trustees. Monday's final decision was not made in a vacuum or without counsel, though certainly not every person would agree with what has been done. Ultimately, a confluence of factors coalesced into this direction, including the general decline of the men's basketball program over the last few years, creating long-term concerns. Division I coaching changes happen regularly in America and are expected under such circumstances. Coach Sutton served longer and won more games than any basketball coach in ORU history. We honor him today for his contributions to ORU and love him and his family. In years to come, he will continue to be celebrated by the ORU community. Because of all this, the decisions made over the last several months were very difficult. Yet at the end of the day, we believe that it was clear Coach Sutton's long season of service at ORU was at an end, and it was time for a new season. An offer was made to Coach Sutton that would have allowed him to stay one more year, during which time we looked forward to honoring him while also honoring or working toward the future of the program. During the process, Coach Sutton met face-to-face with administration at different times, including as late as this past Sunday, to discuss options. On Monday, he rejected the options presented to him, thus bringing about his release. Administration attempted to contact Coach Sutton by phone several different times during the day. On Monday, over a period of several hours with no response. Ultimately, a voicemail was left informing him that, as anticipated, his release was final. An official written notice also was sent to him during this time. Immediately following the call and notice, the president, athletic director, assistant athletic director, and assistant coaches met with the men's basketball team. We did not want the team notified. During that time, operation during those months. As we reviewed the matter further, we concluded that any continuation of this request was simply not necessary. We believe that we can trust the discretion of our ORU community and have thus empowered our coaches and players to represent the appropriate ORU ethos and culture in their particular sport. No official policy exists in our athletics programs regarding tattoos. Second, we do not have a quote-unquote faith test for our athletes. However, a couple of years ago, in parallel with the Whole Person Scholarship and our Whole Person Educational Philosophy, the athletic department developed a Whole Person Champion evaluation. Just as Whole Person Scholarship recipients here at ORU are evaluated in different ways, so every athlete that is recruited to ORU is evaluated in 4 areas: athleticism, academics, social adeptness, and spiritual life. You can still be recruited if one of the areas is weaker than the others, providing your cumulative rating qualifies. We're excited about the quality athletes who are being recruited to ORU under this system. They are strong academically, socially, and spiritually. These are student athletes who will use the platform of athletics to demonstrate Christ to the world. Student athletes like men's basketball player Emmanuel Iskwesi. Emmanuel has a GPA of 3.75. He is a gracious and articulate communicator. He is a wonderful believer in Jesus who is spiritually engaged all over campus, and he was also recently named the Freshman Player of the Year in the Summit League. Or student athletes like baseball player Grant Glaze with a 3.29 GPA who also speaks boldly of his faith at team meetings, campus events, and even at youth rallies, and who just last night pitched 2 2/3 brilliant innings to get the win over OU. At ORU, we readily admit that we are called to a higher standard. We're not ashamed, nor will we be pressured into accepting an easier path. We are committed to recruit high-caliber young men and women of integrity who will compete for championships and win at the highest level. We will help our athletes develop as leaders and world changers. At ORU, we will compete for the glory of God. I want Mike now to take just a few moments, if he would, and talk about where we are and the next steps being taken toward the future of our basketball program, men's basketball program. Mike?
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. We have appointed Rodney Perry as the interim head coach, and Rodney is working with the team at this point. I want to tell you a little about Rodney. He came to our staff last year from Avila University, where he was the head coach for 7 years. He won the National AAU Championship in 2016. He won gold in the Nike Global Challenge in 2015 as the head coach of that team. In 1995, he was the coach of the year after winning the national championship. Rodney is a graduate of Missouri State University and is just a wonderful young man. He has a great relationship with our players. He's been a great coach throughout this year. So we're proud to have Rodney. Rodney is not only the interim head coach, he will be one of the candidates for our full-time head coaching position. We're in the process of that search now. We've received over 40 resumes in the last, 36 hours. It's pretty amazing, the number of people and very high-caliber people who are interested in this job. We've named a search firm, or a search committee. We're not retaining a search firm. And it'll be a 6-member committee. We will work our way through these resumes and recommendations that we have received, and I hope to narrow it down to, I'll just say 10 or so. We haven't determined that number yet. Then we'll bring some people on campus at that time to interview them and then narrow it down to a few. And at that point, then get together with the president, and between he and the committee, we will name a new coach. The timeline for that, because we have our Board of Trustee meetings next week, which will kind of interrupt the process, we hope to get this accomplished by the end of the month. We realize that today is National Signing Day, and we realize that we have some work to do. So the sooner we can get this done for the sake of our current players and for the program, that is our plan.
Good. Thank you, Mike. We'll take some questions now, 10 minutes or so. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Dr. Wilson, just so I don't misinterpret your opening statement about negotiating with Scott.
Yes.
Were you expecting him to stay for 1 year and then be basically a lame duck coach for the next coaching staff, or am I
No. Mike, you want to speak?
What we were trying to negotiate is that he has 2 years left on his contract, and that was for him to stay next year and rebuild the program, and then he would resign at that point. And we would honor the contract for the rest of the term.
So basically
why we didn't came about the way it did, and it was very unfortunate. We would have much preferred to let Scott know face-to-face. But the way this had played point. Unfortunately, we've had some situations during the last month or so where some of these things have leaked out. And we got very concerned about our players, about our coaches, and our concern for them was that we need to let them know what's going on as quickly as we can. And without having any assurances of any kind that we weren't going to have leaks somewhere, we felt like we needed to move as quickly as we could. So that's why things came down as quickly as they did. Sure, we would have loved to have sat down face-to-face, explained the whole thing, gone through it one final time, but time just didn't give us that. But with social media as it is today, it's quick.
Is there any concern of possible unpleasantness when it relates to a coach that's been here for 18 years, never on probation, in this world of college athletics, and a few losing seasons disrupts that? Is there any concern that, that the consistency is not there? Obviously, the 18 years is a proven consistency, but he could have gone to other jobs. There was a loyalty on his part to stay, and all of that. Is there any concern that maybe that has created sort of an upheaval in that regard?
I can speak. Again, this is not a process that even happened over a matter of weeks. And so over the last couple of years, we feel like that ORU has been gracious to Scott, and he's been good to us. We love him. He's a good man. I think the determination finally just came that this season for Scott and his life and for ORU was over, and we needed to move forward. And so not easy, of course, very hard because of 18 years and all the loyalty, but ORU has also been loyal to Scott. We've been good to him through this time.
Dr. Wilson, you talked about ORU having a higher standard.
Yes.
Is it fair to judge a coach on Division I?
Obviously, our higher standard includes athletic excellence. So we believe the best way you represent God is to be a winner, okay? And so that is part of the equation. And I might say, that's not all of this equation. There were more factors than that over time. And this was the big factor over these last couple of years.
But whenever you have these other standards that other coaches don't have, you're lessening the recruiting pool for a coach, right, as compared to the people you're competing with.
Well, I've heard that. I'm not sure it's totally true. It's lessened, perhaps. But there are a lot of great young men of great character around the world who would love to play at a place like ORU. And finding them is the key. So we feel like the pool is fantastic, and we can have championship teams with high-integrity athletes.
Does this university feel confident to where, from a monetary standpoint, athletically, that another coach who comes in will not be faced with having to play road games to pay the bill, so to speak? Or, that was a major concern with Scott, having to go on the road and playing, games that maybe other universities wouldn't be faced with, and not getting the total home and home situation. Does that have to continue?
We'll see. There were special circumstances that caused having to go on the road to play those game guarantees, okay? It had to do with certain things that the men's basketball program wanted and asked for and agreed to play those games in order to get some of the things that they asked for. Depending upon the overall budget and a whole lot of other expenses that are rolled into that, we'll see where it goes. I wasn't a huge fan of having to go on the road and end up starting the season 2-10 or whatever. We've always said that by playing the bigger schools, it prepares us for tougher competition. But I think the last few years, we'd all agree that maybe we had a few too many of those, and it was a heavy dose. So we'll see what happens.
We've got
Dr.
time
Wilson.
for about 2 more questions.
Yeah,
With
okay.
what's ensued over the last 48 to 72 hours,
Yes.
you talked about things catching you off guard as far as what has happened. If you were to go back and do it again, what specifically would you do over?
I don't think much that we would do over. Again, this was a long process, well thought out and well communicated with Coach Sutton, that concluded in a decision that he was participating in. Mike has explained why we decided at that point to move quickly. You know, Division I college basketball coaches lose jobs across America all the time. This is not a new thing in our culture. So I think we've been surprised a little bit at some of the energy and innuendo and things that have gone on in social media. Social media is a strange world, and it takes off fast, and we're all learning how to cope with it. So I don't know that we would have done anything different. We waited to speak today. I know in the reporter's mind, you need information. We understand that. And I want to apologize to you, really, because we've left you hanging a bit, and I understand that. And yet, in our hearts, we wanted to protect Scott in every way we possibly could. We love Scott. And so when we saw the velocity that's going on in social media, we felt like it was time to speak and clear things up and really give detail that we might not have given otherwise.
Dr. Wilson, will the same criteria that you use to determine
Yeah.
whether or not a student athlete
Yes.
can come here and play, will that apply in the head coaching search as well?
I'll speak to Mike, but.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yes. We would
Absolutely.
assume so.
There's no change in that.
In a nutshell, what would have saved Scott Sutton's job?
Good question. You know, it's been a long process. I don't think this happened this season or last season. And I came here 4 years ago. We may have already been sort of headed this way at that time. I think it's just the end of a season. It shouldn't reflect bad on Scott. It's just an end of an era to a certain extent at ORU. And, of course, I mean, if we had excelled and won the Summit League 3 times in a row and been to the NCAAs and all of that, that would have been a different story. But the decision wasn't made just on that factor. It was just a matter of, in looking at it for the future of the program, it was time for a change, just bottom line.
Probably more people talking and reading about ORU basketball in the last 2 days,
Yeah.
2.5 days, than ever in the history of the program.
Yeah.
Even more than when you
Yeah.
played
Yeah.
for a Final Four berth out here almost.
Yeah.
Were you prepared for that? Did you expect the reaction to be what it's been?
We knew there would be some energy, and we regret this. Some of the stories are a little bit off from what we think is true, and that's why we've come today. But at the same time, our program will hold up. This is a good program. Mike has done a fantastic job at ORU. He's well respected in NCAA athletics and in the community. We're going to have a great team in the future. We've got great returning players. And we're really excited about the future. This is a tough spot we've been in this week, but we're excited for the days ahead. So.
One last thing to make sure, there's no talk of moving out of Division I. To be clear, you're staying Division I, correct?
Absolutely.
No, we're very
Absolutely.
committed. In fact, we love that for our players. The bigger the stage, the better,
Yeah.
to demonstrate what whole person athletes can do.
That's all the time we've got.
Well,
Okay.
let me address
That's
one
good.
more, if you don't mind.
That's good.
There was talk about what they call it, the faith scorecard.
Yeah, the faith scorecard.
We all have a copy of it in our phone.
But, and that's fine.
We didn't fabricate it.
No, but it's not the faith scorecard.
Faith score, yeah.
You need to understand that just like the enrollment process at ORU, not every student athlete here has to be a Christian. That's never been the criteria. It is a 4-part criteria, and we go through an evaluation, just like the Quest Whole Person interviews are conducted, and the enrollment management department goes through those, and that group evaluates all of the applicants based upon academics, on social skills, and on spiritually alive, okay? We simply have those 3 plus athletics. And in looking at your scorecard, if that's what you want to call it, it has a 10-point system, a 40-point system, because there are 10 for each of those, okay? As long as you reach a certain criteria, they could be 10 in athletics, 10 in academics, 10 in social, and 0 for knowing the Lord. But if they are a quality person that's open to the leading of the Holy Spirit, bring them on. And that's how we got Luke Spencer Gardner. That's how we got Evan Black. That's how we've gotten, I don't know how many people, and that criteria has not changed. Now, I will say that our preference is to have every team made up primarily, and we don't have a number on anything, but we want the core group of that team as strong enough Christians that everybody knows who we are and what we're about. So the notion that we don't recruit Christians is simply wrong. It's simply wrong.
Mike, have you spoken to Eddie Sutton?
I have not since this occurred. I spoke to Eddie 2 weeks ago, maybe. I've been involved in a Bible study with Eddie over the last 6 months.
Dr. Wilson, have you spoken to Eddie Sutton at all, about, or the Sutton family? Have you guys talked with Scott since the situation?
No, I have not at this point. I hope to, though, in the days ahead. We care for Scott. It's been a bit intense. And, of course, college presidency is not easy to get room space anyway, but we care for him, and we will speak together, and I think it will be healthy in the days ahead. We anticipate a good relationship with Scott. We're going to celebrate what he's done here for 18 years. He's been the winningest coach in ORU history, so we will celebrate that in the days ahead and find ways to do that.
Mike, how many of those 40 applicants would you say, you look at and you say, I can see that? I mean, how many of those 40 would you say are qualified to even consider to coach a Division I basketball program?
We're going to have trouble narrowing it down to 10. I've got,
right?
I've got 6 to 10 that could walk in here tomorrow.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, no.
No, I'm telling you,
Wrong.
I've been blown away. I can go back to the days when we went through the interview process in hiring Scott, okay? This is tenfold more quality than what we had back then. I've just been shocked at the people who really want this job, and I think that says a lot about the university.
And know our ethos.
Yeah.
And still want this job. That's important to understand. They know who we are, they know where we're going, they know the emphasis of the program, and they still want to be here, a lot of them, and really good quality
So
people.
if you put your finger on a date on the calendar that you'd like to have a coach hired by, is it?
Good, Mike, I don't know.
That's,
Whenever we get the right one is
what month is it? April.
We'll be 6 weeks away from June 1st.
No, I want it done by the end of this month, which I think is, 2 weeks,
Yeah.
roughly? 2 weeks?
Fast track,
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah, but it's a very impressive group, and to talk to Dr. Wilson's point, I've had conversations with 3 or 4 that I'm pretty sure will be in that final group, and I explained to them to the T, the scorecard, if you want to call it the scorecard, what we're expecting of them as leadership of our young men, and to a T, I'm all in. I'm all in. When can we talk?
I mean, when I was a kid in Texas, I knew about ORU basketball before I even knew what ORU meant, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, the first time you've had to hire a coach since '99, and the first time you will have promoted somebody or hired somebody from outside of the program. Presumably-
Unless Rodney.
That's right.
Yes.
In a long time.
Right.
So, I mean, you would agree this is a massively, considering you're in a little bit of a fragile state right now, it's a massively important hire.
I wouldn't go to the fragile point, but I would say this is a very important hire, Bill. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I mean, the future of athletics, which many times rides on the success of men's basketball, rides on this hire. There's no question.
I mean, with all due respect to your baseball, which is awesome, your baseball team program is fantastic.
Say that again, say that part.
Baseball.
Yeah, I like that. It's awesome, right?
It's undeniable. And it's been that way through 3 coaches now. But wouldn't you agree that kind of the front porch for ORU in regard to public perception?
Absolutely.
A lot of people's men's basketball.
Absolutely, Bill. Absolutely. We've always known that. Yes.
Good. Okay, thank you. Good.
Thank you for being
Thank you,
here.
gentlemen. Ladies, too. No, I don't think so. I think we're headed out together, so, I think